This is the Business Owners IT Podcast with Anthony Gerasch and Ryan Carter, where tomorrow's technology meets today's conversations.
Hi, I'm Tony Gerasch.
And I'm Ryan Carter, and this is the Business Owners IT Podcast.
A podcast where we discuss tips, tricks, and solutions for business owners involving all things tech.
All right, another week, another dollar. We are working on CIS Control 13, Network Monitoring and Defense. That's to operate processes and tooling to establish and maintain comprehensive network monitoring and defense against security threats across the enterprise's network infrastructure and user base. Now, as we go along with these, I'd like for you guys to think in your heads, a good question would be, how would you know if your network or systems have been compromised? And this should fill right in. So if you want to take us through the key aspects, Tony.
Sure. So, that's a very important question, right? And it's something that we worry about in tech all the time. I have to say before I get through this is, I always assume somebody's in my computer. So no matter where I'm at home, anywhere, I assume somebody's in my computer all the time. So what does that mean? That means I make sure I log out. I make sure I shut it off when I'm not using it. I make sure I lock it when I walk away. I do all I can. So, because you need to assume, what I'm saying, that somebody's in there.
Yeah.
So the key aspects are network traffic monitoring, and there's going to be some overlap in these CIS controls. So boundary defense, right? That's your perimeter. Segmentation and isolation. Again, that's, that can be two things, segmenting the network, but also isolating a host if it should be compromised. Threat detection and alerts. How do we know that somebody's in there? How do we detect certain things that I think are important to detect is impossible travel in your email, people accessing web pages that are in Europe or Russia, Belarus, China, Ukraine. Them are all places that are hotbeds for hackers. Making sure encryption and data for data in transit is protected. Access control, again, this is coming up multiple times. Regular updates and maintenance, and then incident response. So, the CIS's controls are, you need to create policies around these, right? That's the idea, this is it. So, create your policies around these frameworks. So we'll dive into network traffic monitoring. Again, this is, goes back, and I talked about it in the previous CIS control. This goes into talking about collecting logs, computer logs, firewall logs, switch logs, any logs that you can collect, right, and putting them into some place where it can be analyzed. Again, in your firewalls and stuff like that too, they have the detection, IPS and detection that can happen at the firewall level too. But, it also can be a human looking at a security operations center. Yeah. Boundary defense. Okay, I'll keep going on that. That's your firewalls, right? That's what protects you from the outside world. And it can filter malicious traffic. A good example is you have a firewall and you're at the office, and you get a malicious email with a link in it, right? And for some reason, your filter for your email didn't catch it, and it went through advanced threat detection and didn't catch it, but all of a sudden you click on it and the firewall says, oh, wait a second, this is a known malware, and it blocks it.
Yeah.
It kind of just happened to us. We're trying a new fake phishing thing, right? And our firewall was blocking some of the content.
Got through all the other defenses, but the firewall blocked it.
Yep. Excuse me. Yep.
And that actually takes us back to the previous episode where we talked a little bit about firewalls and talked about those blades and those fifth generation firewalls with your IDS, IPS, and blocking those kind of things. Again, Tony had mentioned, it's a good idea to have, that those blades turned on or have that fifth generation firewall, and that's one of the reasons why.
Yeah. So we have this new fake phishing thing through Huntress, which is an awesome tool, and the content's really good. But being that we're secure, we can't get that content. We couldn't get that content to come through. And since our customers are just as secure as us, they wouldn't get the fake phishing. So, that's the beauty of the firewall, right? It's each layer of defense.
Yep.
Segmentation and isolation, again, this is the same thing where you separate your critical systems from your Internet of Things, or in my case, from my son. So
We went in depth in that in the last
Yeah.
episode, so please check out the previous episode if you want to hear a lot more about his son hacking and all this stuff.
Yeah. And then the other thing is isolation, right? So, today we have tools that are, endpoint defense, endpoint detection and response. We have tools today that will isolate a host. So if somebody does get into, a workstation, an employee's workstation, we have tools that will, monitor for that. And when they see it happening, they isolate that host, kick them out. It has no access to the internet anymore, the computer, but we still have access to it, and then we help them fix it.
Yeah.
So I mean, and you got to realize that sometimes this is happening in the middle of the night. So it's not always happening. I was on social media on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, right? And some guy was basically saying, we got a problem. He knew he had a problem, but he had nothing to isolate it. He didn't know where it was coming from. He was asking for help. And he didn't know where it was coming from or how they got in, and he had nothing in place to isolate it, and so his stuff started getting encrypted, and he knew he had a problem, he just didn't know how to attack it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. Stop that lateral movement.
Yep. Threat detection and alerts. Again, that's the same thing, right? It gets into your EDR and other things where, in your SIM, where if you have a threat, it's detected. In our case, it gets detected. Sometimes it gets isolated, depending on how severe it is. They're texting us, they're calling us, they're emailing us, they're creating tickets. So there's multiple ways once something is detected to alert us.
Yeah.
Encryption and data in transit. I mean, again, this is kind of an old topic. I guess it's still out there, but basically you need to make sure that you have encryption, end-to-end encryption when communicating. What does that mean? So, if you have a spreadsheet full of thousands of social security numbers and you're sending it someplace, you don't want to use FTP because FTP is not secure, right? They can read that in data. You can't always ensure that your email is encrypted. Now, today, most email is encrypted. If you're going from Microsoft 365 to Gmail and all that stuff, it's encrypted. But if you're going to somebody that has an old on-premise email server, it won't be encrypted because the older protocols don't have TLS. It's just basically SMTP.
And it's best effort when it comes to email, which means if TLS is off on the receiving end, then it'll still receive it and it'll just be in plain text.
Right. And the same thing when you're looking at websites, right? If you're going to be uploading something that has personable, identifiable information, you need to make sure that you're in an HTTPS environment. And then, of course, Microsoft and the rest of it internally takes care of the TLS, the networking part of it.
And in your web browser, you'll see a little lock up there, usually where you put the URL in on the left or right side. That little lock will tell you that it's encrypted. If the lock's on, that means you're using TLS or some type of SSL for that. And other times when you're going to a website and it tells you that this website is not encrypted, it'll tell you, and then you have to accept it and go forward. You should think twice before you move any bit forward because you never know exactly where that website's going or who's reading your data now that you've allowed to go to an old HTTP website.
Again, we get into the access control. Again, this was the previous one is very similar, right? You want to have access control in place, and it can be, by IP address segment, or it can be by, groups of people that have access to certain things. So you want to control and restrict access to your servers, your switches, everything, right? So, not everybody, especially when you get into a larger environment, not everybody needs to have access to, the backup, or not everybody needs to have access to the firewall or the cameras or whatever. So that's all about access control and working with a good partner that provides leadership around IT, right? Virtual leadership for you in all different ways can tell you, this is what you should be doing and why. Regular updates and maintenance, again, that's the same thing. You got to patch. I don't care what it is, where it sits. You got to patch your software. You got to patch your network equipment. You got to patch your Windows devices. You got to patch your Internet of Things. You got to patch your telephone. You got to patch everything. All right. The reason they're putting out patches is not because they like the right software. They're putting out patches to fix problems and bugs and things that they know. if there's a problem in a phone and they know about it, they may not necessarily tell you, right? Because it's bad public publicity, right? They might just fix that and keep it quiet because it's serious.
Well, have you ever got an update for your iPhone and you looked and clicked on tell me what this update is? Apple straight tells you now, we're not going to tell you what the problem is until after everything's patched. We're not going to let you know because the attackers are going to use what this problem is that we found against you.
Right.
So Apple will not tell you what that problem is. There's a lot of security engineers out there to be able to tell you what that problem is, but you're not going to get it off your phone directly from Apple.
Right. So, that's the idea behind patching. Incident response. This is a big one, right? I had mentioned on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, that there was somebody on social media in a public group that I'm in that's, network IT business owners. And, he didn't have an incident response plan. He had no clue, right? He had no idea of what he should do. He was asking for help, right? So, you have to have an incident response. I mean, you have to be able to identify what systems are affected. You need to be able to isolate that, right? And then you need to know what to do. When I said to him, a couple people got on there, I said, well, the first thing you need to do is call your insurance company, your cybersecurity insurance company, because you have something going on and really they're in charge, right? If you want to get paid, you start messing with it, right? So you got to have a plan, right? You got to have something written down so when this happens, you know what to do, right? Mm-hmm. You know what to do. You know how to recover. You know how to take action. So
yeah, we actually have good checklists on our incident response plans for customers. Business email compromise, a computer gets shut down because of isolated because of possible ransomware. We have different checklists of what we need to do for that. So it's part of our IR plan for our clients.
Yeah, and the CIS framework, it's a nonprofit. It's very easy to follow. This is not hard. This is not something that's very difficult to follow.
No, it's not. And you know what? That kind of leads me into our tip of the week. I'm just going to jump ahead just because of what you said there. Is some of this stuff can be expensive. If you're going to do a SIM and a security operations center, some people think they can tackle this themselves and build out their own security operations center and just take care of the alertings that come from the SIMs. This stuff it's noisy. I mean, it'll hit you with every alert, everything that goes through that firewall, everything that goes through your network, and it'll hit you, and you won't know what to do. You'll be so inundated with all the white noise that you don't know what to do. And that's the point where I feel you should reach out to a professional like us or other companies that take care of these kind of things that will do it for you, because we don't have our own security operations center. We hire that out to the professionals that know how to cut that white noise down and give us the proper alerts. Now, they give us the alerts, and we act upon them for you. But again, this could be expensive, very expensive for you. But if you go out to the professionals, we will make it a lot better for your pocketbook and then make you feel safer, for your business.
Yeah, and that's for sure. You can't do all of this stuff yourself. And as small business owners, you may not know where. And not everybody needs a SIM. So, you need somebody to tell you, yeah, maybe you should have a SIM, or no, you shouldn't have one. So, again, it's this is a framework, right? Sometimes it's you have to acceptable risk. Yeah, I'd love to know that information, but I can't afford it. At this time. I don't want to do it, right? All we can do is say why you should do it. Now, if you're a big company, it's a different story.
Right, exactly.
So the goal of this CIS Control, right, is to detect, analyze, and respond to malicious network activity, reducing the risk of compromise and ensuring the network remains secure. Right, so that's what they're trying to do. So we're trying to make sure that it's your network is secure and that nobody's in it.
Yeah, so. That another good point there is Tony had brought up. I don't know if it's this episode or the one before, but you should always assume that someone's in your computer. Yeah. And that's the same with a network that you've created either in the cloud or in your office or wherever it is. No network is 100% secure. No matter how well that network is architected, someone can get in. And that's where this control helps you out, is to be able to detect and monitor issues within that network and respond. That wraps me up.
Yep. So I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the Business Owners IT Podcast, and we hope to see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week where we talk about CIS Control number 14, Security Awareness and Skills Training. Oh, yeah, here we go.
Unique computing solutions. Your IT challenges solved.